Thank you all for coming. This is pretty awesome. At the VA is my favorite poem, by the way. It's so beautiful. My father also fought in Vietnam. So, yeah. Let's see. So I'm going to read a couple sections. I will be dropping the F-bomb, so if anyone's got very tender ears, be warned. Be warned. Let's see. So I'm going to read a couple of sections from Ghana, who is the middle child, and she's reflecting a little bit on the news of her sister having been shot. Malawi has been shot. The words rolled and collided like marbles on a wooden floor. Ghana could make no sense of them. She deleted Kenya's rambling message, then called Malawi's number, but it went straight to voicemail. She sat on the couch in the dim morning light, her locks tied up with a scarf into a loose pile on top of her head, her latest tattoo, a vine of flowers, curling over her shoulder and along the back of her neck, peeking around just below her right ear. She had wandered naked into the living room in search of her phone, the dull ache of a hangover squeezing her brain as she listened to her sister's message. Grabbing Ryan's T-shirt from the cushion next to her, she covered herself, then pulled her feet up onto the couch, straining the cell phone's charging cord. She leaned her arm on her knees and listened to the phone ring so many times, Ghana expected to get voicemail, but her mother finally answered. "Mama, what's going on?" "We're in Florida, me and your father." Her mother sounded weary. "Malawi's in the hospital. We've just landed in the airport. Once your father gets a car, we'll go straight there." Ghana tightened her knees into her chest. "Is she okay?" "They said it was a shoulder wound. Look, I need to go. We'll call when we know for sure what's going on. Okay?" Ghana ran back to the bedroom and jumped on the bed. Ryan lay on his stomach and shifted his head from left to right, but didn't open his eyes. He'd worked well past his regular evening shift and hadn't gotten home until after 2 a.m. She hesitated to wake him, but needed to talk. As a cop, he might have some perspective to help her understand what was happening with her sister. She touched the milky white skin right below the hairline, skin that gradually darkened to a golden brown along his shoulders and down his back. For a white boy, during the summer he got as dark as she was. "Baby?" She nudged his shoulder. "Wake up." He made a grunting noise, rolled onto his side and reached out for her, wrapping his arms around her waist and snuggling his face into her thigh. "Come back to bed," he said, his words muffled. She pushed him back so she could see his face. "Malawi's been..." She paused, thinking maybe she was dreaming. "Malawi's been shot." The phrase seemed absurd to say out loud. Ryan's eyes flickered open. He squinted at her, his face soft and sleepy. "Huh?" Clutching his forearm, her mind began to race, a barrage of questions filling her head. Should she fly down there too? Was it a drive-by shooting? Could a shoulder injury be fatal? Was she overreacting? Daddy would be there soon to make sure Malawi was okay, and they'd call. Everything would be okay. Ryan's eyelids slowly closed and his face fell into the pillow. She stared at him, feeling her throat tight, her pulse throbbing in her head. His arm made one more attempt to pull her back to bed. She shoved him away and went to the bathroom to shower. Maybe she would fly down there. Waiting for the water to warm, she thought about calling Kenya to see if she knew anything more, but decided against it. Ghana hadn't talked to her older sister in months, not since Christmas when everyone was home. "You're not living up to your potential," Kenya had said. The family was gathered, as always, at their parents' home in Crestwood. Kenya loved that they grew up in the bougie neighborhood nicknamed the Gold Coast, that her daddy was a prominent judge, that she'd married a successful businessman, and that she went to law school and lived in a swanky house in Potomac, Maryland. "Is that what you're doing?" Ghana had asked. "Living up to your potential with your 2 perfect kids in your big house and your Louboutin shoes?" "I don't wear Louboutins." Kenya had looked at her feet and with a straight face said, "These are Fendi." Ghana looked to the ceiling. Whatever. I'm serious, Ghana. Look at your life. You do massage. You do graphic design. You're all over the place. You live in a pitiful apartment in Anacostia. Yeah, and you wouldn't set foot on that side of town, right? That's not what I mean. You don't know anything about the people who live there, so shut up. I'm not talking about the people who live there. I'm talking about you and your lack of focus. You need to go back to school. Finish your degree. Go to hell, Kenya. My business is my business. Besides, I'm moving in with my boyfriend next month. Before Kenya could say anything more, Lil Sis had stepped in, as she often did. Jesus, you two, knock it off. Malawi was the peacemaker, the one who wanted everyone to get along, and Ghana loved her desperately. They had talked yesterday evening. Malawi seemed happy to be in Florida, though she had confessed she missed everyone. She had met a guy and said they'd been dating for a few months. Last night, she was headed to a colleague's house for dinner. A woman who also taught math at the same high school. Ghana couldn't remember the woman's name, but she had become somewhat of a mentor to Malawi. At least that's how Lil Sis had described her. Malawi had called from her car on her way to the woman's house. She'd been in good spirits, and they'd laughed about her maybe stopping by her guy's house after dinner for a booty call on her way home. Ghana wondered if her sister had visited him, and he'd gotten angry and hurt her somehow. She turned off the water and stepped out of the shower, wrapping a large green towel around her. In the steamy bathroom, the blood left her head, and she sat on the edge of the tub. Good God, I hope not. This whole Black Lives Matter movement is fucked up, Ryan said. He was lying in bed, propped up on a pillow, scrolling through the news feed on his phone. I don't mean any disrespect, but damn, doesn't everyone matter? You're missing the point. Ghana rolled out of bed, picked up her T-shirt from the floor and slipped it over her head, covering her bare chest, then looked around for her panties, finding them by the bathroom door. The orgasmic afterglow was now a doused flame. You don't get it. We're not saying? Who's we? She tilted her head and looked at him. He stared back at her. Black people. Ryan heaved a sigh. I thought we weren't going to do this. He got out of bed on the other side and faced her, his nakedness in full view. I thought we weren't going to take sides like that. What happened to we're all one, we're all human beings, blah, blah, fucking blah. He bent over, his head disappearing for a moment as he found his jeans and slid them on. No underwear. This usually gave Ghana a thrill. She loved that he often went commando, and when she got the chance, would slip her finger between the buttons of his jeans when she was close to him. But right now, she dismissed the thought and let loose a groan. I can't help it that I'm black, and I can't help it that I'm white, but you're acting like it's all my fault. Maybe it is. She was daring him now, pushing his buttons, waiting to see how he'd respond, this white cop who served a predominantly black community. In the 18 months since they'd met, they had never had an honest discussion about race. They'd acknowledged their different backgrounds. He grew up in the Maryland suburbs, went to a mixed public school, and always had black friends. She grew up in an affluent section of the district and went to a mostly white private school. But despite his exposure and acceptance of non-white communities, he didn't fully understand what it meant to be black in America. A minority, even with money, faced perceptions and judgments white people didn't. Not you personally, she said, but cops. Cops act like black people are evil unless proven without a doubt that we're not. Oh, Jesus fuck, Ghana, are you kidding me? He slapped his hand to his forehead. It wasn't a cop who killed your sister. Maybe not, but they help create an environment that supports people like that asshole who did shoot my sister. She knew her voice was loud. Her heart raced and her pulse throbbed in her temples like a hand tapping a stretched drum. They make it okay for white people to harass and fear black people, to burn black churches, to shoot young men walking through a wealthy neighborhood, and to murder a young... Her breath escaped her, and she stood, unable to say anything more, anger throttling her throat. Malawi had only been 27. Quietly, Ryan said, I'm not the enemy, Ghana. She wanted to smash something and said, You sure about that? He was quiet, and she said again, louder, fury running through her blood, Are you sure? Come on, Ghana, that's not fair. She knew he wasn't the enemy, yet was ready to explode, to batter him with all the firepower she had surging inside her. She screamed at him, "Life's not fair!" "For who?" he yelled back. "For the African-American girl who thinks she's so connected to the people, but grew up in a wealthy neighborhood with a father who's a judge and a mother who stays at home and paints flowers all day?" She stared at him, heaving. "You're an asshole." He almost spat at her. "You know what? Fuck you. Fuck you and your Black Lives Fucking Matter campaign." He stormed out of the room, his arms in the air, stretching a t-shirt over his head. She heard the front door open and slam closed. The room settled into a quiet calm, the air shifting, allowing her to breathe. On the bed, in her t-shirt and panties, she was shaking, shocked at her outburst. He wasn't the enemy, she thought, but someone was to blame. The political monsters who thrive off the fear and hatred within us all. Police departments across the country, the white man who held a shotgun to her sister's chest, all of them. She wiped her palms across her wet cheeks, but it was so much bigger than all of them. Ghana slid on a pair of yoga pants, tied her hair back, and settled at her computer, trying to focus on a client's design project. But the chaotic emotions continued to swirl inside her.